Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for Saturday, October 8th, 2016. Let's jump right into VR, guys. Just a quick bit of preamble. Still some confusion on the October 6th video, even though I annotated it. So I put another annotation at the beginning regarding the cameras, and hopefully that puts a nail in the camera coffin. All right, and the other thing was the Unreal Engine. I had mentioned Unity Engine in that video. The link was for Unreal. My brain was thinking Unreal. What came out was Unity, which was the wrong thing. So yes, I'm aware it's the Unreal Engine, and I've also got added information on how this is going to work. So what's happened traditionally is a dev for a game will pay Epic 5% of their gross revenue after the first 3,000 per product per calendar quarter. That's how it works with Epic for games. It's different if it's educational. There's loopholes where that isn't required. But for games, that's the standard. What Oculus is offering is they're saying they will cover that 5% up to 5 million gross revenue. In other words, up to a maximum of $250,000 for developers. Now, they don't get into the specifics on what you need to do to qualify. That information, I couldn't find it. It's not mentioned anywhere, even linked from the news articles. If I find out, I'll update that at that point. Next up, first news item is the Santa Cruz prototype. So, Upload VR sat with Jason Rubin just to get some clarification on this unit. And it was interesting what he had to say. So basically he talked about the three categories and what the end goal is with all three. So you've got mobile, standalone, and PC. And here's what he had to say. He said, PC is how we can make the best possible experience and push hand presence and other things like that forward. Mobile is how we can be at the right price point, get to the largest audience, and start to see how people react to 360-degree videos and movies and all these other things that we're putting out there. Standalone is yet another eventual step in that direction. And although Santa Cruz is a prototype, all three of these lead to the eventual goal of VR glasses. So that's the end goal, to have a glasses type. That's probably their internal objective, regardless of what it is, if it's mobile, PC, they eventually want virtual reality, essentially in a pair of glasses. Next article has to do with when gaming is part of your marriage, where does virtual reality fit in? And I like this article only from the point of view that I am married and have been for, holy crap, almost 25 years now. And the author of this, her name is Addie Robertson. We'll go with Addie. And she talks about herself and her husband, and they're both into gaming. Her husband works with setting up multiplayer gaming. I guess he works for a multiplayer game organization. He also works a little bit with arcade machines. They didn't get into the specifics on what, nor is that really important. And she, of course, is a reviewer. So she works for The Verge, does virtual reality articles, and reviews role-playing games. And she was saying, with Metal Gear Solid as an example for the PlayStation 4, they can each be playing it and still have that time where they're both, working together towards the game, or that feeling that they're both enjoying the gaming time, right? They'll offer input on bosses, that sort of thing. She says she didn't get that same sense playing virtual reality games on the Rift. In fact, she had to yell out a couple of times just to make sure her husband was even there. Now, my experiences have been completely different with that. And there's actually a video that I watched a couple of days ago from UK Rifter. He is a fellow VR YouTuber, and he put out a video which is just, it's priceless, hilarious to watch. And he's got his poor wife literally crawling around the floor, crawling around the living room, and I'm still not sure which Vive game it was because I was too busy laughing. But yeah, she's crawling around. She's got to open ducts, crawl through the ducts, do repair work. And if you watch that video, it is absolutely apparent how social VR can be, even without being able to see if your partner is around you, right? And I've had many experiences like that with virtual reality, with the Rift, with the Vive, with my wife. So yeah, I don't buy that it can't be social in that sense. Just because you can't see the person, you know, to me, and obviously to the UK Rifter, that was half the fun, right? Because you're trying to almost guide them along with what you can see, but they're the ones actually experiencing it. They don't see the living room. So it's almost like two kind of perfect halves. Each has a little bit of information that the other doesn't, and you're working towards a common goal. So not a big, huge, disagreement by any means, but just my way of saying, if you've read that article, absolutely it can be social. And I think it's only going to become more social as we move forward with the technology. Now, Eurogamer had a really good article about from 7 of their staff sitting in a group going over which games they felt, which older games, would make great virtual reality games. And the first member of the group said he would like to see Rocket League. Now, this is a game I'd never heard of. It's a hybrid game. It's racing car on a soccer pitch or football pitch, right? And he said it was a lot of fun. You move your camera around like you've got a free roaming camera. And he felt it would be a good game in virtual reality. The second game they talked about was Cannon Fodder. Now, this is a game I am familiar with. This was a game for the Commodore Amiga in the late 80s. And it was a forerunner of all the StarCrafts and real-time strategy games that we have today. It was a hell of a lot of fun to play back then. And Ian Higton, he was the staff member who talked about this game. He said the levels could basically play out as if they were on a tabletop. And that's very much like Populous, which was another one of those God-type games where you play the role literally of a deity and they are your people enacting your orders, right? But what he said was, put the level on a field or on a tabletop and you stand back and guide their actions, which is almost the same thing. And I agree. I think real-time strategy games would have a home. Now, there are some of you've commented on this, absolutely, that think it's almost an abomination to take old games, like a waste of time, instead of innovating, just taking old games. And I can agree with that to a point, but I think there's room for both. I think there's room for innovation. In fact, there's going to be innovation whether we, port old games or not. I just think there's room for both because some of these older games would make very good VR games. Some I don't necessarily agree with, but some would be fantastic. Next one was Total War. Again, that is one that I can see being a lot of fun in virtual reality from the point of view of, this omniscient battle general, being able to float around the field, go from side to side, and, have your troops be the extension of your will. I just think that type of game and real-time strategy games would be great on VR. Now, the next one, almost perfectly suited for VR. And if you haven't played it, get yourself an emulator, try to find the game and play it. Shadow of the Colossus for the PS2. Some people say it's, been overhyped. I liked it. I liked it a lot. And what I liked about it was the aspect of MMO gaming that I really like is raiding, fighting bosses. And Shadow of the Colossus pretty much distills just that. It's picture just a series of boss fights chained together and you essentially get Shadow of the Colossus. What's more is some of the boss battles are really neat. Like there's one where you've got to climb up the body of one of the Colossuses. And it's easily 200-300 feet up that you're climbing. That's not too terrifying in a 3D game on a 2D monitor. But in VR, that would take on a whole new experience. physically and literally climbing. You know, if you add in some touch controllers to that or use the Vive motion controllers, that would just add a whole new strategic element to it. So yeah, a game like Shadow of the Colossus, I think, would be absolutely work well in VR. Next up is the adventure game Grim Fandango. That was the 5th person in the group. The 6th game, Head Over Heels. Now, this is an isometric game. It was also in the 80s. 2 characters, head and heels. Thus, you know, the name of the game. Head was all about jumping, and heels was all about running. And you would need to use their combined abilities to solve puzzles to advance. And essentially, they were, you know, you were escaping from rooms, like the escape room type games, but via puzzles and their abilities, as opposed to trying to find out necessarily just secrets in a room. So I would agree with that one as well. And then the last one they talked about was Theme Park Simulator. So your roller coaster, all your different amusement rides, and experience that in VR. And I get that as well. I think that could be okay. Probably wouldn't be my first choice, second, or third, but I could see how for some that would be fun. So I throw that back out to anybody who's interested. What type of game would you like to see? You know, maybe an old favorite. Doesn't matter what era, what machine do you think would make a good virtual reality game? Next up, the upcoming conference. Now, this is going to be at Paramount Studios. It's called VR on the Lot. And it's going to take place in what are called tracks. So there's 2 tracks. The first one is sold out. That was the one that, you know, honestly, to me, sounded the most interesting. So no wonder that it's sold out already. It would be the, you know, presentations from industry people like Dane Smith, who's a visual effects producer for Deadpool. Track 2 is more the production side of things, and there are still tickets available for that. Supply and chain distribution, production, post-production, those type of areas for virtual reality. And tickets range from $200 for students to $569 for a premiere pass. And again, that is October 13th and 14th. So if you're near Paramount Studios in Southern California and are interested in attending a VR conference like that, there's still tickets available. And it's sponsored by some pretty big companies, Epic Games, Oculus, and Vive. Competitors elsewhere have joined to sponsor this. And there we are, guys. That's it for the news today. As always, cheers, and definitely catch you on the VR flip side.